so much, Sami. Talat, over to you.
So, Sami, they say clowns, comedians are some of the saddest people in their private lives. And one example is John Cleese, who they say is actually very, very depressed, has a lot of depressive kind of episodes, although he's so funny in Fawlty Towers and all the work that he does. So tell me a little bit about how are you, when you're not up there on the stage and stuff, how are you? And what are some of the personality or characteristics of of somebody who wants to do stand-up comedy? What kind of personality do you need to be?
I know more people, because almost all my friends are comedians. I know more people who suffer from depression than probably the average person does. And that's just part and parcel of it. One of my role models is Stephen Fry, the British comedian and satirist and stuff. And he's severely depressed, has severe bipolar disorder, he's depression prone, and he, I think, tried committing suicide once or twice as well. It's a very different, I think what it is to be a comedian, you have to have a certain worldview. And to have that worldview, you have to be open to understanding emotions in a way that are different from other people. And I think, having some kind of nakedness and openness to your emotional strength, to your emotionality. And so that definitely is a part of it. I mean, I don't personally suffer from depression, which is probably why I'm not a very good comedian compared to some of my friends. But at the same time, I do know that, last year, the year that we went into lockdown here in Melbourne, we went 1 year in lockdown. It was a terrible year for me on a personal level. A lot of stuff happened in my personal life. And at the end of that year, I had a new show. Most people will, spend a bad year and cry and then, suffer PTSD and then go on and think about it and talk or not talk about it for the rest of their lives. I did an entire 1 hour show about it, which was probably the best reviewed show I've done, sold out every night, got nominated for a bunch of awards, and it was the most fun I've ever had. And by the end of that show, I was happy because I didn't feel grief over everything that happened. I learned to process it. And it's just, that's a tool comedians have, that they use comedy to kind of process things in their personal life sometimes as well. Not always, not every comedian is depressed, and not every comedian is suicidal, but every comedian is very good at taking things in their personal life and turning into comedy. There's a rule in comedy, which is tragedy plus time equals comedy. And for comedians, that in that equation, time is the smallest thing. Like, it doesn't take very long for us to turn tragedy into comedy. And I think it's something Pakistanis can get, because I remember in 2006, between 2006 and 2011, when we were having terrorist attacks all the time in Karachi, and it was a time of a lot of political upheaval, the jokes would fly thick and fast. We'd have a terror attack in the afternoon, and random people would be sharing jokes over SMS in the evening about the terrorist attack. And I think it's a coping mechanism as Pakistanis. We're probably, pound for pound, joke for joke, one of the funniest nations on the planet. And we don't get respect for that, unfortunately. But our level of comedy is so much higher than most of the people I've seen around the world. The satire that we have, the insightful political satire we do, it all comes from a certain level of tragedy behind it.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead, Fariha.
Sorry, no, Talat, I was just saying, because all three of us can relate. I think that was I was just reflecting, whatever happens, I mean, we've got flooded sort of roads during Barish, bijli, so many, but you see the memes coming out, right? 12 ghante bijli nahi hai. But, I think that's a really good point.
It's a very Pakistani thing. It's one of the things where, like my Indian friends over here in Australia, they always talk about how they grew up watching Pakistani comedy, like Tanhaiya and everything, and how much they respected that. Now they've got some of the amazing stand-up comedians in India, and they've done a really good job of embracing that style of comedy as well. But if you go to the Middle East, for example, it's very slapstick. It's very crass comedy. It's not as layered as ours is. And I think Pakistan just had the right mix of tragedy and oppression with a little bit of free speech and that free spirit and all of these things that just kind of made our comedy unique to Pakistan. And it's something that I honestly hope it gets celebrated more, because it used to be at a time, our heroes were Bushra Ansari, they were Moin Akhtar, there were all these people.
About things like I know we have funny sitcoms even now, the little dramas and plays that are really quite funny, but stand-up comedy, I don't know, Fariha, but it hasn't really taken off in Pakistan so much. I don't really hear about it so much. They had, yes, Blackfish was there in improv, and Saad Harun does some stuff sometimes, but it's not really like, there isn't like, a big, is it not following, or what is it?
Well,
Is that not taken off?
80s, sorry, Sami, I'll just hand it over to you, because Talat, I also wanted to attend a few, right? One thing which was very interesting, I found there were certain shows which are sort of adult comedy, and I thought, okay, how is this trend coming about? I don't know who's attending it. And then you're right, the clean, like I've seen the, I don't know, Talat, if you've seen or Sami, they're fantastic, obviously, Western stand-up comedians, but also India. So, I follow some of them on Instagram. But you're right, I've yet to see a few Parkers. There's some are very good. I don't know, there's some, there are some, the names are not coming to me, but not as many as we could have or we may have. Actually.
Well, I mean, part of it is like, look, we had stand-up comedy is an American art form. In the end, it started in America. It's very American style. And we've had stand-up comedians in the past. Omar Sharif is a stand-up comedian. He used to get on stage with a microphone, no one else, all by himself, doing jokes, and it worked, and it was really funny, and it's really, really well done. He's probably one of the greatest comedians in Pakistan's history. But with regards to actually coming up with developing the form further, what you need is comedy clubs. And what you have comedy clubs, you need to have young people who are going out all the time and paying money to see it and allowing it to develop. I don't know why that hasn't really, when I was coming up, we used to have open mic nights and things, but I think it's also, everything we did was largely in one space, which was the T2F, the cafe in Karachi, created by Sabine Mahmood, created by, Zach and Zahir Kadwai, and T2F is a place where I learned to be a comedian by practicing all the time. It's the last place I performed when I was in my last time ever in Pakistan. And the thing is, for comedy to really develop, it needs a certain level of pushing boundaries, pushing edges, saying things people don't want to hear. That's how it is. It's just instinctive in a comedian to push the boundaries of what.
Sami, you wrote I Migrant, you wrote Boy of Fire and Earth. What's next? Are you working on a new project or a new book or something that you want to tell us a little bit about?
Quite a few things. I'm doing a documentary series here in Australia for radio on race and racism. It's just something that I find fascinating, how it manifests itself and stuff. So that's a documentary series I've been working on for 6 months. I sell short stories regularly still. I've sold a few short stories about jinns and things, which if you go to my website or if you just Google Sami Shah plus short stories, a lot of them come up. And I'm working on a new novel which is set in Australia entirely, because I've been here for 9 years at this point, and so my brain more thinks about where I am. So yeah, I've got a lot of work that's coming out. These days I'm in that stage where I spend maybe 2 years working on a bunch of things, and then they all come out together at the end of the 2 years. So I'm in the working on a bunch of things phase, and hopefully by this time next year, a ton of new stuff will be coming out.
Fantastic. Look forward to it, Sami. Fariha, anything you'd like to ask? Or
thank you so much, Sami. Thank you.
No, my pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being on the show. Really enjoyed that. I'm sure a lot of young people out there who are struggling between, what they should be doing and what normalcy is in our country, or in what their parents want them to do compared to what their heart and passion tells them. I think you'll be a real role model for that, because I think the things that I picked up was, you need to be happy. And you kept saying you went for computer science, you did this, but you weren't happy. And I think the message to take away for everyone is it's really important to be happy in whatever it is that you want to do in life. And
absolutely. It's about, you don't want to be a person who on their deathbed looks back and goes, I wish I'd done that instead. Because you can't get that time back. You can't do it again. So you might as well do the things that make you happy. And yes, your parents will get upset, but Pakistani parents spend most of their lives getting upset. Don't worry about it. They'll get over it.